Yes, it is. And anyway, we're gonna wait a few more minutes and let people trickle in so everyone can hear about all the great presentations we have.
Welcome, everyone. We made it to the 4th week of NNIP month, so yay!
I never had any doubts.
I appreciate everybody's. I've been getting great t-shirt notes, so I'm gonna we'll have to create a collage space on the photos on the Hoover and the sweet notes people have been giving me about reporting out on their buddy encounters. So both of those have cheered us up along the way. And getting vaccinated, obviously.
They've been so cute. I've heard such good things about the buddies. I see Jessie on here. She's my buddy. Hey.
Yeah, and my apologies to anyone who got 2 reminders yesterday, because I seem to like have a struggle with my mail merge add-on. So you got very reminded for if you hadn't sent your t-shirt yet. So.
Okay, let's get started. So thank you so much for joining us today, everyone. Like Kathy said, we're coming up to the end of NNIP month, and what a better way to celebrate than to showcase the incredible work that our partners are doing across the network. Today we have 6 excellent presentations, 3 on COVID-19 response and 3 on data-driven work. You'll see for yourself, but I'm particularly excited for these presentations because they show the strength and value of our network, and that our partners were able to respond amidst all the craziness of 2020 and provide content and support for our communities that was both helpful and innovative. So before we get started, I have a few announcements. To close out NNIP month, tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern, we will be having the What Does This Moment Require philanthropy panel. We'll be joined by representatives from national and local foundations to share their thoughts on the trends they see in philanthropy, how their own foundations have shifted in thinking and grant making, and the role they see for data to inform their efforts and those of their grantees. So we encourage you to invite your funders to attend. And in fact, if you want to put in the chat if you're attending or if a funder's coming, feel free to do that. To close out the month, we're also having small group lunches. We'll be having one at 1 and one at 3 p.m. Eastern on Thursday. So make sure to join one and reflect on NNIP month and peer share with other folks about whatever you want to talk about, really. But I think it's a great opportunity to kind of reflect on everything that we've learned together and kind of talked about throughout this month. May, of course, is super busy also, so we totally understand. What do you mean you're not drone delivering a lunch to me over here in Houston? Anyway, May is, of course, a busy month, but we know that there were some sessions that maybe some people missed. If there's a session you really wish you would have attended but didn't get a chance to, definitely check out the recordings on Hoover. If you're struggling to access a recording, you can email us at nnip@urban.org. And also we'll be migrating this content over to the website, the NNIP website, but it will still be accessible on Hoover for several months. So feel free to get it wherever is the easiest and make
Yeah, I'm not sure about several months. We should check.
It's 3 months, I checked.
Is it 3 months? Okay.
We haven't got 3 months, everyone. Okay, so that's enough of that. Let us know if you have questions in the chat, but before we get started, we wanted to have quick surprise pair share icebreaker sort of situation. So Alex, I don't know if you're ready to put us into pairs. Excellent. But we're just going to spend a little bit of time talking to one other person about really whatever you want. I'm going to put some prompts in the chat if you're at the end of the day and don't have a lot of creative energy flowing through you, but feel free to talk about whatever you want. We'll have 5 minutes, and then at the end, we'll come back and we'll get started with our 6 presentations, and we'll start with the 3 COVID response presentations. Yay, welcome back everyone. I love those because there's always the mad scramble, manic energy kind of going on, but thank you for doing that with us. I hope you had a great Pearce share out, and we're just gonna get started. Indoor dining, it's so true. What even is it? I don't remember. Anyway, so the schedule for the rest of the showcase presentations is basically we're going to do 3 presentations. That's going to take approximately 15 minutes, and then we'll have 10 minutes of questions. So I encourage you to do your questions in the chat, and I'll try to read them out loud, and of course prompt if there's not a lot of questions coming up. These first 3 are going to be related to COVID-19, and then we'll do the same thing for our last 3 presentations, 15 minutes, and then we'll have 10 minutes of questions and closing. So like I said, while you're listening to a presentation, feel free to put your question in the chat. Cool, so I know, I also hate it, but that's okay. Let's get started with the first one. So for presenters, the timing is a little bit awkward at the beginning. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna share screen and you'll see your presentation. And then when I click on the present and you see the presentation go to presentation mode, that's when your timer gets started. So Cheryl will be our first contestant. And give me one.
No pressure, no pressure.
I know. Let's see. Okay, can everyone see that? Okay, great. So I'm gonna click on this and you can go ahead and start.
All right, great, thanks. So hello and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Cheryl Knott. I'm the research manager for the Baltimore Neighborhood Indicators Alliance. So today I'll be describing some work that our group started last year in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. So I'll be highlighting some dashboards, a mapping initiative, and an infographic that we created, as well as highlighting the technology that we leveraged to create an open data portal for these visualizations. So at BINIA, we serve as a one-stop shop for data for over 130 different indicators. Our longitudinal data repository spans over 20 years, and we share this data in our annual vital signs report in 8 different topic areas. Our data is available on our website and also on an ArcGIS data hub. So this has allowed us to have data at the ready whenever we need it for answering timely questions that people might have for us. Last March, we were starting to get peppered with questions about COVID-19. So who's vulnerable during this time? What are the implications of the stay-at-home order? And what do people need right now? So we realized pretty early on, we could start answering these questions by tapping into our existing infrastructure of open data and our human networks, such as the NNIP. One of the very first things that we produced in April last year was this infographic of lives that could be saved through the stay-at-home order. So using the data and methodology put together by our partners and friends in San Antonio, thanks Laura, we calculated that approximately 378 lives could be saved in that first week of the stay-at-home order, which in Maryland went into effect on March 30th. So next up, we created an ArcGIS online web map. So we pulled in the state's COVID case data. I overlaid this with some of our community indicators from our vital signs. Our data is at a custom geographic unit and the COVID cases by zip code, and displaying the data on this map was an easy way to allow users to visually see patterns despite different geographic units. We primarily focused on displaying data from the ACS that we already had in-house, as well as some other data layers being published by the state. As far as the ACS data goes, we focused on older adults, school-age children, race and ethnicity, digital access, and transit-reliant populations. We also included housing vulnerability, so renters spending more than 30% of their income on housing, households earning less than $25,000 a year. All these community indicator data sets provide the context and an understanding of the different types of challenges that neighborhoods face. The disparities in Baltimore's neighborhoods that we've known for years have been really amplified in 2020. So crime's been a persistent issue in many of Baltimore's neighborhoods, and with the governor's stay-at-home order, there were questions about how this could impact the crime rate. Some initial reporting indicated that crime was trending downward, so we decided to create an ArcGIS online dashboard to track crime by neighborhood and see the differences within the types of Part 1 offenses. So the dashboard contains incidents as well as charts for each of the Part 1 crime types. We decided to show this quarterly and provide the previous 2 years for comparison. While overall property crime rates were down citywide, robberies as well, not every neighborhood had that uniform decrease in crime, and like many cities across the country, saw increasing violence last year. So in addition to this dashboard, we also decided to take a look at calls that Baltimore City residents were making for assistance. So hopefully that slide will come up soon. Hopefully not a glitch there. And that other dashboard will, it pulls in open data, there we go, published by the city for 311 and 911 calls. So we analyzed the top types of calls to those systems back in April 2020 and decided to track them for a year to see the variations from week to week by zip code. So the top calls citywide to 911 were for things like disorderly conduct, narcotics, assault, family disturbance, loud music, and larcenies. For the 311 data, the top calls were for trash, parking complaints, streetlight outages, rat rub out. And I'll let you guess when the city had some recycling and trash pickup interruptions due to COVID. Little hint, there's a spike. Lastly, we downloaded calls to the United Way 211 system and included them. So predominantly, people were calling for information about COVID, food, and housing. So we've been able to share these tools with communities so that they can have a better understanding of the needs of residents, and having this information available to working groups and policymakers can allow for better, hopefully data-informed decision-making to address the neighborhood disparities in Baltimore. So all of these tools and visualizations are saved onto an ArcGIS online hub. We've mostly finished up a lot of the data work, and at this point, our emphasis going forward is to add in text narratives to better describe the tools and the ways that the data can be used to advocate for a more equitable city. So we've received funding from the Greater Baltimore COVID response to complete this work, but it's been an exercise and an opportunity to get good at pulling these data viz pretty quickly. So thanks everyone. Here's my contact information, and I look forward to questions. So thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you so much. That was awesome. Thank you for bearing with the time. I think, yeah, someone mentioned the 211 data examples. I think that was, for me, a little bit newer to data. One of the most interesting things to see NNIP partners do during COVID, kind of find a way to unite previous indicators that we've been working on as a network with real-time data sources and combine it so that communities can have a better understanding of what's going on in a time when it was so disorienting. So thank you. Okay, up next, we have Cristina, who will be presenting in a second. Let me get your slides up. Okay, can everyone see that? Great, Cristina, are you there?
Yes.
Perfect, okay, so I'm gonna click this button and then your timer will start.
Hi everyone, my name is Cristina Martinez. I'm the research coordinator at Community Information Now in San Antonio, and I'll talk you through our newest tool that plots COVID-19 and vaccine data against community indicators to look for associations at the zip code and census tract level. So one of the most difficult COVID-19 disparities to overlook is the one by race and ethnicity, and even the CDC includes on this graphic that race and ethnicity are risk markers for other underlying conditions that affect health. So you can see here that for most people of color, their risk for illness, hospitalization, and death are all increased compared to the average non-Hispanic white person. And you see this trend continued with the vaccination rates. So here you can see that the Hispanic, Indigenous, and Black populations are all underrepresented in at least getting one dose of the vaccine compared to the non-Hispanic white person. So we were curious to see how these trends present themselves in San Antonio. So here we have a map of Bexar County. On the left, you have the case rates, and on the right, you have vaccination rates added in there. So Bexar County has a population of about 2 million people, with 60% of which are Hispanic. And the Hispanic populations tend to be larger in the southern part of the county. So you can see those are where the darker rates are. So we have higher case rates on the left-hand side and higher case rates and lower vaccination rates on the right-hand side in those central and like southern zip codes. So we wanted to show these associations in a scatter plot. So we put one together, an interactive one, that will plot a COVID-19 or vaccine indicator against a community indicator, where each dot represents either a zip code or a census tract. And so the indicators we included, we have our COVID indicators, which are cases and hospitalizations per 10K, deaths per 100,000 people. We have our vaccine rates, total doses, 1 dose, fully vaccinated per 10,000 people. And a lot of community indicators using mostly the ACS 5-year data, so, unemployment claims by zip code, and business data. And these look like change in firms, change in sales, a change in change in employees from the beginning of 2020 to November 2020. And sorry, I lost my train of thought. So, oh shoot. So we use Shiny, thank you. We use Shiny to put this together. It's hosted for free on shinyapps.io. This is the first time we used it, so any feedback or comments on how we can change it or improve this tool for our users would be really helpful. And we plan on putting this code on our GitHub site pretty soon. So if anyone wants to take a look, try to replicate it or tweak it, please feel free to do that. And I guess we'll let everyone know once that's up. So let's get into it. This is our tool that you can see that, sorry, I think the timing might be off, but I'll keep going. So we have our plot space right in the middle. On the left-hand side, you'll see that that's where the user can choose their cases. Sorry. So here are some interesting correlations that we found. This is hospitalizations and the Hispanic and white population, and you can see like opposite correlations or opposite relationships between the two. And when you hover over a dot, you get the information. This is where the zip code is, this is what the rate is, and this is a percent of population living in that zip code. So here is vaccine access. So this is fully vaccinated. You'll see as the use of public transit decreases, vaccination rates increase, and as the percent of households with a computer or broadband increases, so does fully vaccinated people. At the census tract level, we also see opposite relationships or associations for less than high school and an associate's degree or higher, with basically opposite correlation coefficients. And that's there just as a guide, not like a definitive like number, just for people to use while they're using this tool. And the last one is the uninsured and people in poverty who are insured in cases. So you see that insurance might have some type of protective effect for those in poverty. And then you can see that you can also identify outliers. So just a quick shout out to the Health Collaborative in San Antonio Metro Health for providing the funds to put this together. A shout out to Dr. Gloria Aga and the San Antonio Health Informatics team for helping us out with some data. And thank you so much. I really look forward to questions and comments.
Okay, sorry about that, but that was an excellent presentation, even with some of the weird time gaps. So thank you for working with that. I really like the, I think correlations is always like, I don't know, people have different thoughts, but I think it's so important to be able to at least have those to be able to then move beyond that into other forms of analysis. So I find the presentation of them, the combination of them, very helpful. Okay, so let's see. Next up, we have Edwin from Drexel. And let me get your presentation up. Okay, are you ready?
Ready to go.
Sounds good. All right, I'm gonna click on this and your timer starts. Go ahead.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Edwin McCulley. I'm a research coordinator at Dorrance School of Public Health at Drexel University at the Urban Health Collaborative. And today we're going to be talking about our project tracking outcomes and inequities of the COVID-19 pandemic across 30 U.S. cities. All right, so at Drexel's Urban Health Collaborative, we developed the COVID-19 Health Inequities in Cities dashboard in partnership with the Big Cities Health Coalition and with support from the Robert Wood Johnson and DeBow Mount Foundations. Here's a link to the dashboard plus a QR code for mobile viewing. And below is our excellent research team at the UHC that I'd like to thank. So large health inequities have been observed in cities, including inequities in COVID-19. Our project aims to develop a dashboard that allows users to examine COVID-19 indicators in US cities, identify factors associated with COVID-19 outcomes and inequities, and to characterize and evaluate relevant COVID-19 policies. The ongoing pandemic has highlighted long-standing inequities in the US. This is especially true for inequities in COVID-19, which have been observed at multiple levels and are driven by a complex set of factors. For this reason, we developed an equity framework to help conceptually guide indicator selection. This schematic is an overview of our data pipeline. We obtain data from several sources, prioritizing publicly available data. Any remaining data that is not publicly available was requested directly from the city health departments. And when city level data was not available, we utilized county proxies. Dashboard development was driven by an iterative process of feedback-based meetings with stakeholders. Our team met with the stakeholders to prototype, review, and launch new dashboard features. And this figure here shows how the dashboard is updated and maintained, with the automatic updates occurring daily and manual updates occurring monthly. Aside from the dashboard, we developed a website to serve as a project landing page. The website features our equity framework plus data considerations for all indicators and metrics. Additionally, the website has a blog featuring posts to showcase results and highlight interesting findings. The City Report Summary tab allows users to examine daily counts of testing, cases, hospitalizations, and deaths for each of the 30 cities. Here you can see normalized trends in COVID outcomes for Philadelphia, and below we see the total number of daily tests, the number of positives, and percent positive over time. In the City Report Inequities tab, we can compare outcomes by race, ethnicity, and filter by age adjustment. We see a disproportionate number of hospitalizations among non-Hispanic Blacks in Philadelphia. And we can see here that a rate ratio of 1.96 indicates that the incidence rate for non-Hispanic Blacks is 96% higher than non-Hispanic whites in Philadelphia. In the same tab, we can see inequities by neighborhood using zip codes. You can select and map COVID-19 outcomes by neighborhood level indicators. Here we see that more socially vulnerable neighborhoods in Northeast Philadelphia have relatively higher rates of new cases compared to other neighborhoods. In the City Comparison, City Level and Trends tab, users can compare outcomes across cities with different characteristics. You can select from several indicators and outcomes, like incidence by census region. Here we see higher incidence in the Northeast region during Wave 1, the South during Wave 2, and the West during Wave 3. In the City Comparisons Individual tab, we can visualize rates of COVID-19 outcomes by race ethnicity data across all cities. This figure illustrates how COVID-19 incidence disproportionately affects Hispanic individuals in our sample. The City Comparisons Neighborhood tab explores differences in COVID-19 outcomes between top and bottom quartiles of neighborhood level indicators. Users can select and plot various outcomes and indicators. So this plot here, it shows that it shows us that 10 cities where socially vulnerable neighborhoods tend to have higher incidence rates. The City Comparison City Level tab describes inequities across cities using city level data. This plot shows differences in COVID-19 incidence between the top and bottom quartiles of city level factors. Here we see that the rate of new cases is nearly double in cities with the highest percentage of non-Hispanic Black population relative to cities with the lowest non-Hispanic Black population. During this project, we faced a few challenges, including variations in data access, completeness, and timeliness. And for future directions, we continue to update the dashboard, evaluate policies, and in early June, we'll be adding vaccine data and visualizations. My contact information is there. Thank you for allowing me to present. This has been great.
Awesome. Excellent job, everyone. Those were great. And y'all are hired to make my PowerPoint slides because that was very impressive. So let's now talk questions. Let me see the chat and see what's been coming in. Like I mentioned, make sure to include your questions in the chat. The first one we have from Sarah, for the BCHC dashboard, how did you identify recruit stakeholders to provide feedback on the dashboard?
So that's a really good question. To identify stakeholders, we initially met with the Big Cities Health Coalition, which is an organization comprised of health department representatives at the city level. So using our partnership with the BCHC, we were able to kind of leverage their Rolodex, if you will, and reach out to local health departments. From there, we held individual meetings with health department representatives to see if they were interested in participating. And then from there, we surveyed what data was available publicly, and for data that was not available publicly, we looked for an alternative source or were driven to use a data use agreement.
Awesome, thank you. And Cheryl and Cristina, if you have heard of like people using the dashboard and what they have found helpful, you can also share that. I think that's interesting to hear.
Sure. Well, so I do have a secondhand anecdote. So Seema was telling me about how she was doing a demonstration of our 211-311-911 dashboard to a community group in Southeast Baltimore. And one of the things that they were able to see, particularly looking at the 211 data, is that the actual calls didn't really line up with some of the perceptions or the ideas that they necessarily had about residents in that area. And so having access to the 211 data, and so we get that through a website. So it's Maryland 211 counts Maryland, something along those lines. So you're able to build out queries and export data by zip code. And so that's data that we have known for a while was there, but we really didn't have any sort of process for downloading the data. And we really didn't know necessarily, okay, so who might want to use this data? And I think when the pandemic happened, it was this perfect opportunity to combine it with other sorts of data sets to think about what do people need in the moment, and thinking about also how do you track not only different needs by zip code or by neighborhood, but then across time. And one of the things that has been just incredibly valuable for us is to think about changes across time and the different ways that the data can be useful in any sort of immediate response, or also for any more long-term planning and project implementation for neighborhood needs. So it was just really great to hear that little bit of validation that some people found it useful, and just kind of makes it worthwhile doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I forgot to mention a really important point, that we only have case data available at the census tract level. So we do not have vaccination data at the census tract level. No one has to be jealous that we got that. But we did have someone reach out to us and let us know that they used it for a presentation. And I think Laura had mentioned someone wanted to collaborate with us to include a few more indicators in there. So there's definitely a lot more that can be done with it, and it's already provided some utility for some folks here in San Antonio.
Yeah, and I think one of the really cool things about our portal is that it was made with just a lot of existing data sets. So we built it off of data that we had already published, our community indicators. I came up with the idea of even putting this together because I was poking around on the state's COVID website and I realized that they were using Esri dashboards. So I was able to just go and grab that data service. And so I think that's one of the big value adds in Baltimore of what we're doing is that a lot of data is being shared out there, but it's not necessarily in that one place. So that's been fun trying to pull together all the different data sets and make sense of what's available and at what different geographic levels and be able to communicate that to an audience.
Excellent. If no one has questions, I will take narrator's privilege or MC privilege.
One in the chat.
What's up?
There's one in the chat for Edwin on who you are negotiating to get all those data, I think, across cities.
Perfect.
So in terms of negotiating with our stakeholders, like I said, we are trying to prioritize publicly available data. So with that comes some challenges, especially when it comes to access. For instance, some data may be published by the state health department, right? That is a little more granular, let's say on the city level, okay? That data may not be accessible from the city health department website. So what we tried to do is go in and gather data across all of those sources. And then, once we surveyed the holes in the data or any missingness in the data, we reached out to our point of contacts that we were put in touch with from the Big Cities Health Coalition. And from there, we went on to negotiate and request data. And, again, if that required the use of a data use agreement, we were working with the health departments respectively, or we were working in some instances with the city legal departments to negotiate obtaining that data.
Excellent. Thank you so much. If you have more questions, definitely put them in the chat. Maybe we can get them at the end, but let's do our next 3 presentations. Woo! So up next we have Mariko from Seattle. So give me 1 second to get your presentation up. Okay, can you see that?
Yeah.
Great. Okay, I'm going to click on this and then your time starts. All right, go ahead.
All right. Thank you. Hi there. I'm Mariko Toyoji, and I'm an epidemiologist with Public Health Seattle in King County, where I work on the Communities Count project. And we are the Seattle partner in NNIP network. And so I'm here to share with you today a new workshop series that we're developing and conducting this year. This is very new work, but I really want to thank my Communities Count colleagues, Hani Mohammed, Vanessa Quince, Joey McCracken, and Sarah J. Sanford, who I think might be listening in right now, for their contributions on this work. And so we're going to be talking about a new workshop series that we're developing called Racism as a Public Health Crisis. What is the role of data? And so I just want to start off with some quick background on Communities Count. We're a public-private partnership between the Seattle Foundation and Public Health Seattle King County. We've been around about 20 years, and we're a unique partner in the NNIP network. I think we're the only one housed in a public health department. And so what brings that is a bunch of access to population data, but also a perspective on health equity and using our data resources and tools that we have at the department to further equity work locally in King County. A core part of what we do is providing tools and capacity building for communities in King County to access and use data, really in the promotion and furthering of local equity work. And we do this by providing a local data platform, but also a number of supports such as technical assistance, workshops, and trainings. And so, like many indicator projects, we're learning that just providing data is only one part of putting data to action. And so over the last few years, we've really expanded our programming to include a number of data and evaluation workshops, and also equity blogs that provide some broader context on root causes of local disparities that we see pretty consistently. So last year, in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic and rising social movements, Public Health Seattle King County, along with many other health departments around the country, declared racism as a public health crisis, and a crisis that really impacts the health and well-being of our communities. And so a part of this work is acknowledging the health department's role in being complicit and also taking action to dismantle oppressive systems. So as a part of this ongoing work, Communities Count, we're developing and hosting presentations and dialogues. The first one was very recently at our Best for Kids Summit to address and discuss the role of data in naming and addressing racism as a public health crisis. The presentation really focuses on introduction, looking at socioeconomic factors, physical environment, health behaviors as all in healthcare as contributors to opportunities for good health, and emphasizing the policies, equity, and programs all impact an individual's experience and access to the resources and social determinants of health. In these presentations, we are acknowledging the role of data in perpetuating inequities and also talking explicitly about actions we're taking to build a more equitable data cycle, including engaging in these conversations and also about broader practices of decolonizing traditional data standards. Part of what we do is to provide local county disparity data on a number of indicators. So here's one of our examples where we talk about life expectancy, and we actually look at the gaps that we see locally. That data is also then presented with context on policies and practices that drive inequities. Really what we want to do is shift away from a framing that's put blame on communities' experience inequities, but to rather reverse and place a magnifying glass back on systems that reinforce and perpetuate racial hierarchies that we see. So we followed the data presentation with a dialogue with our partners about their thoughts on the roles of data in naming and addressing racism as a public health issue. We did have around 80 attendees as a virtual summit. So we use Padlet as a bulletin board as a way to engage people in kind of a broader discussion when you have a lot of folks. And so here's some of the questions that we prompted folks to engage with and also collected feedback and their thoughts in kind of the Padlet environment. The slides here kind of show some quotes that I pulled off Padlet. And thematically, we were hearing a lot of what people wanted in their data system that really emphasized participatory data practices, highlighting community strengths and assets rather than always taking a deficit approach, collecting more qualitative and data and narratives of lived experience, also expanding data collection practices to account for how communities view themselves and to better include their experiences in the data that are being collected. There's also an ask to collect data on the impacts of systemic racism, and then also around our values with data, and really holding cultural rigor to the same value as scientific rigor, and also valuing community Indigenous ways of knowing and their participation too. So we have some next steps, which includes doing another 2 sessions of this workshop with other partners and taking those findings and what we're hearing back to our colleagues in our internal teams and also our community advisory group. We're also planning 2 more workshops, kind of expanding on looking at COVID-19 and those impacts, and then also engaging with some of our stakeholders to show examples of community storytelling in data and its role in addressing racism as a public health crisis. So keep in touch with us. I'm realizing that the top email address is incorrect, but you can contact me at mtoyoji@kingcounty.gov. But thank you so much and feel free to reach out. Oh, and thank you, Kathy, for dropping a link to some of our blogs.
Yes, awesome. Thank you. That was so awesome. I wrote a quote down at the end. The cultural rigor should be held at the same standard as academic rigor. And also this idea of putting data quality at the same realm of data justice, or considering data quality to be part and parcel with data justice, I think is super important. So thank you. Up next, we have Austin and Tony presenting. Give me 1 second to get your presentation up. All right, great. Can everyone see that?
Yeah, looks good on our end. Thank you.
Yep.
Perfect. Okay, your time starts when I click this. And go ahead.
Yeah, everybody. My name is Tony Smith, and with me today is Austin Harris. One want to present to you a little bit about data-driven housing stability in the COVID era, and it's really going to touch base on some of the lessons learned here in Memphis and some of the systems and processes that have been in place to kind of help us navigate through the eviction issues that are ongoing here in Shelby County.
And I think throughout the presentation, we've kind of divided it into two sections here, as you'll see in a minute. One, we're going to touch on what the eviction crisis has kind of looked like in Memphis, and then also what our work at Innovate has looked like with both the eviction settlement program and other ongoing efforts. And then we'll kind of touch on, the front of the presentation is going to kind of be on the quantitative support we've done, and then we're going to talk about a project we're doing right now. So I'll turn it back over to Tim.
Yep. As you guys know, if you're following the eviction crisis throughout the country, it's prevalent everywhere, but even more so here in Memphis. Eviction Lab ranks us 41st out of 100 major cities throughout the country. As you can see here, since 2016 to 2020, Memphis had about 138,000 FED filings, about 27,000 a year, and over 48,000 FED judgments. If we look at the eviction filing rate, it did drop from about 43% year over year from 2019 to 2020, but that is hinged upon COVID and eviction moratoriums and things going on, and the ongoing advocacy works from programs such as this right here, the Eviction Settlement Fund. Founded through funds from the Emergency Relief Act, fighting a pandemic back early last year, and we were able to do some really great things for $2.1 million. So taking a look at the numbers, the program saved over 1,115 households from facing imminent evictions, paid out over $1.7 million in settlement funds. And as you look here, this graph shows what the peak months were beginning in June of that year in regards to applicants. The profile the most needed, those who were most needed were single females, African Americans. Majority of them were between the ages of 19 and 39, and the majority of them had two or more people live in a household with them. This set of data right here really kind of breaks down the individual settlements that were given out and bulk settlements. Where we learned that bulk settlements were a critical part of the settlement process in regards to solving some of those problems with such movement of money as we go in and out of the program. I'll turn it back over to Austin.
So to complement this, the eviction settlement allowed us to look at kind of the outcomes, but we wanted to see what the process looked like. So before COVID, silver lining in this is this really allowed us to start an eviction tenant support system in Memphis. Though we're one of the fastest growing rental markets, we don't really know what's going on in the courts. And we know that Tennessee has a very landlord friendly system, but we wanted to kind of see what that looked like on the ground. So in partnership with the University of Memphis Law School, since March of 2021, we've observed just about 2,500 cases. 82% of the cases, the tenant did not even appear in court, which is higher, I think, than most national averages, but speaks to just the realities of a tenant and being a low to moderate income working class family. 96% of tenants did not have any representation at all. And then also, less than 1%, 70% of the observed hearings were finished in under 1 minute. And then on the other side of that coin, landlords had 89% of the time were represented. And so we'll continue this research through the end of the summer, and we'll hope to produce a report that shows in the details sort of how unbalanced and inequitable the eviction system is and the way it's playing out in our courts, and how landlord friendly, the extent to which how landlord friendly our court systems are. So with that, we'll stop here and take questions.
Perfect. Thank you all. I think it's so interesting to be able to find something like that, like one of the fastest growing markets for tenants, and be able to respond to it. And I think that speaks to the value of the work that we do, being able to track that data, recognize that, and then put in the qualitative pieces and the partnerships to be able to innovate. So thank you so much for that. Remember, folks, questions in the chat, but last but not least, we have Erik, and let me get your presentation up. Okay, there we are. Can you see that?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect. All right, I'm going to click on this and then your time starts. Okay.
Hi, my name is Erik Woodworth. I'm the Research and Application Development Lead at the ARC and Data Scientist for Neighborhood Nexus. I'm going to introduce you to our newest and most powerful data mapping tool, Data Nexus. I'm going to give some context in which we developed this application, some technical aspects of its development, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about what it can do and how it can help the users tell their stories using our data. There's the link there at the bottom, so I'll show that then. First off, the development of this was a matter of necessity. First off, there's the usability and cost barriers to existing mapping and data visualization tools like Tableau and ArcGIS Online. There's a need for our nonprofits that we work with, community stakeholders, advocates, and others to be able to tell their stories with accurate, current, and easily customizable maps and data visualizations. And then there was, of course, the options that we had. We could pay a consultant to do this, which would have cost a lot of money. The tool that we are replacing, that was the other part of the necessity, cost I think about $250,000 and was built with the money of a variety of groups. We could leave a gap in our work, or we could just build it ourselves. And so we decided to build it ourselves. How we are building Data Nexus, first off, we had to expand our internal capacity. So they put me through a 6-month full stack coding bootcamp at Georgia Tech in the winter of 2018. From that, I built a number of small mapping and data visualization applications. Some of them actually are in use in other projects that we're doing. We built a larger prototype of the tool that I'm going to show you a little bit more of. We compiled feedback on that prototype from a variety of people in our agency, other users, data experts across the region. We spent the next number of time building on that. And this is basically what it is. This is Data Nexus here, a lot of code behind it. I'm showing you this page here to let you guys know that there's a lot of these libraries, frameworks, languages behind this, but they're all free. The only thing necessary to unlock the potential of this is to learn the skills to use it. Here you can see that the tool is built off of a configuration JSON document that's stored in a Mongo database. And this determines everything from the header and footer color to the logo, map layers, data APIs, and any preloaded indicators. So it's fully configurable. The application just reads that configuration. The main configuration document is connected to a variety of other configuration documents. And so these are all instructions. So we have everything from our data APIs, our geography APIs to get the layers themselves, and tile layers. All of this can be configured on the back end, and then that determines what the application looks like on the front end. And this is an example of how that same application can be used to create specialized customized projects. So here we're feeding in a different configuration JSON with different header colors, some configuration parameters, different layers, different preloaded data selected, and it produces what we see here, this gears readiness radar. So the tool itself can do a number of things. Here you can add layers, and we have a number of layers, I think 17 at the moment. You can then add data to those layers. To the data, we have about 3,000, for example, indicators for census tracts. You can go through those, build up what we call a data tray, and then click through that data tray to visualize your map. You can style the layers, so you can change the boundary colors. You can change the color ramps on data with layers of data. You can then flip the arrangements. You can also go between continuous binning and quantiles and equal intervals. You can then filter the data using a variety of filters that you can concatenate with and or statements. That filter will then be applied to your map. And then you can export that data as a CSV by the table. You can hear the pool party in the background. You can also create subsets. So after you filtered the data based on, say, a variety of parameters, you can then draw a shape around that, or you can simply click features to select them. That will then allow you to create a subset. That subset can then be stored. So when you refresh your page, it's stored in a session, and then it's there for you whenever you come back. You can also upload your own data. So you can use this interface here to drag and drop or click on the screen there to add your data. The data then joins based on a GeoID field, and then you now have that data available to you to look and visualize, map along with the other data. And lastly, you can share. So you can share in the form of a map. Here we have scatter plots and a histogram. All of this configurable or customizable with the sizing and turning on and off certain features, exporting them as PNGs and JPEGs. And that is it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was excellent. I liked a lot of it, and I especially liked the process at the beginning behind it. I think that's what I think it's a really interesting part of this network is also learning how people are working on the back end. And I love that you highlighted the free software that y'all use to put this together. So great job, everyone. Round of applause. Some of those slides felt like the longest 20 seconds and some like the shortest 20 seconds. So apologies for that, but thank you for bearing with me. Let's hear some quick questions. We got time for about one or two, and then we will be breaking. Does anyone have any questions? I see some in the chat, but they were answered by the presenters.
I had one, Sonia.
Okay, go ahead.
I think it was answered. Just historically, I feel like we've had trouble with user interfaces for users uploading their own data just because you have the structure and all that stuff. So are users picking that feature up, or is it sort of still lingering in the background?
Yeah, so we've just recently released that functionality, and I do agree that that is sort of an issue that we have encountered even just in testing. So what we're doing right now is we actually are building sort of a validation function within there to help give the user feedback. So it will only accept uploads that meet certain parameters. If they don't meet the parameters, then on the screen it'll tell you, oh, that's too long. You don't have headers in your CSV. But you are able to join. So you can change the join field after you, so it automatically joins, and it does a few different data validation things where it'll find % symbols or $ and automatically convert them to the type. But yeah, that's something that we're gonna have to think about, because once you start letting people upload their own data, what we have done though, just to be clear, is that we are not letting people upload data to a database. They are uploading it directly to their browser and they're storing it in local storage.
Okay.
So we don't have to actually host it for them.
Nice. No, we just had this problem in like 2002, and the technology has changed, but people have not changed in 20 years.
Awesome. Well, I have questions, but I also realized that we're actually at time. So apologies to the last three presenters, but they shared their contact information, so feel free to ask them. Also, we have the NNIP Google group, so if this is something that you want to raise up as a public question, we definitely have that forum. Thank you so much for everyone for presenting. Oh yes, thank you, Kathy. Come back to the small lunches also if you want to chat and reflect, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much.